What's happening? Landlord from Alabama here, back with another video. And today, man, we finna talk about Nashon Wright. The third rounder took us all by surprise. Now let's see if he can open up some eyes. Let's go. Okay, maybe you was a secret agent last year. You was James Bond. You was on your 007 GoldenEye type secret missions. And you was somewhere at an undisclosed location fighting crime, doing whatever. But let me bring you back up to speed with Mr. Nashon Wright. He's 23 years old, out of Hayward, California, standing at a whopping 6'4", weighing at 190 pounds, soaking wet, and ran a 4.49 in a 40. He played basketball and football for 2 years in high school, but wasn't too highly recruited, so he ended up committing to Laney Community College. He helped them win a championship in 2018 where he had 17 tackles, 4 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, 1.5 tackles for loss, and he earned all conference honors after having such an impressive year. He then transferred to Oregon State University in 2019. He played 12 games, he had 34 tackles and 3 interceptions. His junior year was the infamous COVID year, and the season got cut down to just 7 games. He started 6 of them. He had 30 tackles, 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, and a sack. He then declared for the draft, and we all know what happened after that. He came to America's team. We picked him up 3rd round, 99th overall. Coming into Dallas, everybody was in a state of shock when we drafted Mr. Nashon Wright. It was better talent on the board, and everybody was kind of frustrated. You know, we was perplexed. We didn't understand why we was reaching for a player of this magnitude. It was better, more reliable, more solid, solidified type players available in the draft at the time. And Quinn was in his first year and he hadn't earned our trust just yet. So everybody was looking at him with the side eye. We wasn't too sure about what Mr. Quinn had up his sleeve. And this was basically him standing on the table. He took a chance on Mr. Nashon Wright. We did have 3 third-round picks at the time. We picked Osa Odigizua with the first one. Then we picked Chauncey Golston. Then, you know, we had a little more wiggle room having a third-round pick. We picked Nashon Wright with the compensatory pick. So, you know, he had a little more room for error. You know, Mr. Quinn felt like taking chances. He was a little more dangerous when he came to that last pick. Now, let's fast forward to Ricky Mini camp and OTAs. And Nashon Wright was the headliner in a lot of these articles that was coming out of Dallas. And he was making plays left and right. No pun intended. You know, Mr. Wright was making plays all over the field. He was doing his thing. He was looking like a 3rd-round pick. He was looking like the player that we wanted him to be. And Quinn was looking like a genius, taking this player totally out of left field. Now, 2020 was one of those crazy years where we couldn't meet the players personally. We had no combine. It was basically survival of the fittest of every team scout. They had to really do their homework, really get deep into the film and see these players in the best way possible to get the best prospect they could. Now we fast forward to training camp and Nashon was still doing his thing. He was making plays, breaking up balls. We got a lot of film of him doing one-on-ones, and you know, he was really standing up, being himself, you know, showing his talents, displaying who he was as a player. And he got a lot of articles, a lot of highlights coming out of Dallas, and I was pretty excited about him going into the preseason. And he got his chance to shine. He played against the Cardinals, then he broke a couple passes up. You know, Nashon was doing his thing. I was really excited about him. We had 2 young corners to play alongside Trayvon Diggs. We had basically ridden off Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis. We wanted to see the youngsters get their time to shine, get their time in the spotlight, and see what they do with it. But strangely enough, after the preseason games, we heard less and less about Mr. Nashon Wright. I'm pretty sure Quinn wasn't too fond of the idea of risking some rookies out there in his defensive scheme. It was already new to the team. He probably felt like he didn't have too much more room for error and wanted to roll with some of the more reliable, dependable veterans like Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis. So that ended up keeping Nahshon Wright off the field. They even kept Kevin Joseph off the field, so you know Nashon was behind him. Given the type of draft capital they gave up to get Kevin Joseph, he was a second rounder. Nashon was a third round pick. So, you know, he was third 2 times. So he was behind Kevin Joseph in this depth chart, and Kevin Joseph couldn't even get on the field. Anthony Brown, Jordan Lewis really deserve some respect for their play last year. They really balled out. They kept the rookies at bay. They kept them off of the field. They was fighting tooth and nail day in and day out, and they sustained their starting roles on this team with 2 talented rookies breathing down their backs. But I'm assuming when Quinn took that chance on Nashon Wright, he knew that he wasn't a player that was ready to play day one. He knew that he was gonna have to develop him, similar to how he did Richard Sherman coming out as a 5th rounder. And you know, the comparison that Nashon made wasn't too outlandish, it wasn't too manic, because they both were some late draft picks, tall, lanky guys. And of course, Richard Sherman arguably turned into a Hall of Famer, so he need to pump his brakes on that. But I kind of get where he coming from as far as the build and the prototype. They are similar in some of their traits. Both of them ex-wide receivers, if I'm not mistaken, so they do have that prototypical type build, a very rare height for a cornerback in the NFL. But as soon as we drafted Nashon, I seen a lot of people that was very sad and looking crazy about it. But when I seen the highlights, when I looked at the tape, Nashon does show a lot of talent, man. He got a lot of ball skills. He's fast, he's long, he's lanky, and you know he can get to the ball very easily. He's sticky. He moves pretty well for a 6'4" cornerback. That's very rare for a player that size to move so well. He has a natural ability for a cornerback, man, and I just really don't see why he didn't get a shot. But the vets just toughed it out and kept him off the field, I guess, and maybe some politics here and there, you know, who knows. But I would love to see him and Trayvon Diggs alongside each other in his defense. 2 tall, lanky cornerbacks with ball skills. That would be a nightmare for most defenses. But even though he's at an uphill battle with the veterans in front of him and a young stud cornerback that's still improving like Kevin Joseph, but he does have an advantage over all of them. He's 6'4". You can't coach 6'4". You can't teach 6'4". That's something that we really need on this team. Most people would love to have a corner of that size. So you know, the mad scientist Quinn, that is right along his wheelhouse. That's exactly what he liked to see in a cornerback. He loves that build. Back to what I said, he was the mad scientist behind Legion of Boom, Richard Sherman, Brandon Browner, tall, lanky corners, even Cam Chancellor. All of those guys was tall, big, running and hidden, you know what I'm saying? So that's exactly what Quinn liked. That's exactly what fits his scheme. But Nashon Wright in year 2, to me, it all depends on his performance in camp and the health of Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis and Kevin Joseph, because he's so far in the depth chart. I believe he's talented, but he gonna have to ball out. I mean, go crazy in camp to leapfrog some of those other people, man, and especially those vets. He's gonna have to battle to the death trying to get around those vets and the young, talented Mr. Kevin Joseph. But that's all I got for you today, man. Just holla at your boy, Landlord from Alabama, with the same handle on all social media. And like I say, 1K, 1 love, Cowboys Nation. Let's go.